everybody, welcome back to our study through the book of Numbers. It's session 7, and we're going to pick it up in chapter 20. But first, a word of prayer. Lord, we're grateful, thankful for the lessons that you're teaching us through this book. We're thankful that this is not just dead man's history, but this is the Word of God, alive and living, can penetrate our hearts. And so we would pray that this word would come alive to us today. Pray that you be with us now in your mighty name. Amen. All right, chapter 20. Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. We're back to Kadesh, and Miriam dies there and is buried there. So we're going to find in the next few chapters the death of not just Miriam, but also Aaron, and that's going to, of course, lead us up to Moses. Not one of the three are able to enter into the land that God promised. But we move on. Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, "If only we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our animals should die here? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink." So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and just like last week, they fall on their faces. And like last week, remember when this statement is read, here comes trouble. They fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. So just as the fathers had murmured, so the children as well. Seems like the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree here. And then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, and gather the congregation together, and speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. And thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals." And so Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. Again, we don't exactly know how all of this transpired and how all of this works, how they were given water in their wanderings in the desert. We know about manna, but in 1 Corinthians 10, we're given this snapshot where it says, "Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all of our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all did eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." So somehow in the midst of all this, the source of living water, springs of water, is coming through Jesus, and he's given this title, the rock, in a sense. We don't know what this would look like, but again, Paul says that rock that produced the river was Christ. So then in verse 10, Moses and Aaron gather this grumbling assembly together before the rock, and he says to them, and again, we're going to come to one of the saddest parts of the scriptures when it deals with Moses and the penalty that he's given. And we'll try to understand the depth of that. And this has got to do, obviously, with how we represent God. Now, the language here is coarse. Let's just put it mildly. Moses is very wroth, very upset. And so picture this. He's now going to say to them, "Hear now, you rebels. Must we bring water for you out of this rock?" And then Moses lifted his hand and he struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. Now remember, God told Moses to simply take the rod and speak to the rock. God never told Moses to lecture the people, especially in this harsh and angry manner. So we're starting to see the misrepresentation aspect of Moses' sin here. There were many reasons to explain the sinful reaction of Moses, but there were no adequate excuses. He was provoked, but he responded in sin. And actually it's described in Psalm 106, verses 32 and 33, where we read, "They angered him also at the waters of strife, so that it went ill with Moses on account of them, because they rebelled against his spirit, so that he spoke harshly with his lips." And then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe me to hallow my name in the eyes of the children of Israel," and here it is, "therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." And this was the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel contended with the Lord, and he was hallowed among them. What does it mean to hallow? To hold him in high esteem, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel. What Moses did was just the opposite. He made God look no different than an angry man or one of the moody pagan gods of the day. He didn't reflect the heart and the character of God before the people. This was his sin. So a couple things from the commentators. More importantly, Moses ruins a beautiful picture of Jesus' redemptive work through the rock which provided water in the wilderness. The New Testament makes it clear that this water-producing and life-giving rock was a picture of Jesus. And I read that in 1 Corinthians 10. Jesus being struck once provides life for all who would drink of him, John 7. But it was unnecessary and unrighteous that Jesus would be struck again, because the Son of God needed only to suffer once. That's Hebrews 10 through 12. Because Jesus now can be approached with words of faith, Romans 10, as Moses should have only used words of faith to bring forth the life-giving water to the nation of Israel. Moses ruined this picture of the work of Jesus that God intended. Verse 14, now Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. So we're leaving that event behind and we're moving on. So messengers are sent from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardships that have befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we dwelt in the land of Egypt for a long time, and the Egyptians afflicted us and our fathers, and we cried out to the Lord, and he heard our voice, and he sent the angel and brought us up out of Egypt. Now here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. please let us pass through your country. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, nor will we drink water from wells. We will go along the king's highway, and we will not turn aside to the right hand or to the left until we have passed through your country. Edom, the Edomites, they are going to refuse this request. Israel's told that in Deuteronomy that they're forbidden to hate or to abhor his Edomite brother. Balaam is going to prophesy. We'll get to him a little bit here. But Balaam's going to predict the conquest and how Edom is going to be judged. The Assyrians in 722, they show inscriptions that Edom becomes a vassal state of Assyria. That's in 736. And then after the Babylonians destroy Judah, Edom, it says in 137 of the Psalms, rejoices on the sidelines. But the prophets foretold judgment on Edom for her bitter hatred towards Israel. So again, it all stems back to this request. Can we pass through? And the Edomites said in verse 16, then Edom said to him, you shall not pass through my land, lest I come out against you with the sword. And so the children of Israel said to him, we will go by the highway, and if or my livestock drink any of your water, then I will pay for it. Let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. And then he said, you shall not pass through. So, and here's the picture. So Edom came out against them with many men and with a strong hand. And thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory. So Israel turned away from him. And now the children of Israel, the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh, and they came to Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron, Aaron, this is your time, Aaron. Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar, his son, and bring them to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son. For Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. So Moses did just as the Lord commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, and he put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. And then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. Now when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron for 30 days. Emotional, had to be. In these chapters so far, Moses has lost his sister, and she was the one, if you remember, followed the ark, or the basket that Moses was put in, that Pharaoh's daughter drew out. That's the first that we read of Miriam. He's lost her, and we're told she was a prophetess, and now he loses his brother. So Moses, as we know, represents the law. And the law could not lead the people of Israel into the promised land. Miriam, who we've read was a prophetess, she represents the prophets. And the prophets could not lead them into the promised land. And Aaron, the high priest, obviously represents the priesthood. And the priesthood could not lead them into the promised land. Only Yeshua, Joshua, Jesus, same word. Only Joshua, that is Jesus, could lead them into the land of God's promise. So I've given you some slides here, some pictures of Mount Hor. This is on the way to Petra. And usually when we visit Petra, we kind of pull off the side of the road and look off in that distance. You can see on this map that little white dome that's there. And this is supposedly the place of the tomb of Aaron. And then this next slide is in Kadesh, in the area of Kadesh, which is the tomb of Miriam. Again, the tomb of Miriam at the oasis of Kadesh. And we're going to get to the top of Mount Pisgah, or as you would know it, Mount Nebo. And this is the view from Mount Nebo looking over into the land of Canaan, or the Promised Land. But now we're going to see an event that takes place next, and what this statue or what this image is all about. But again, I wanted to give you a visual of the land here. You can see, let me see if I can point it out to you. In this area here, you can see Kadesh, and you can see the land of Edom, and you can understand that it would have been, if they could have passed through Edom, it would have been pretty much a straight shot as they would go up. But because the Edomites refused them passage, I'm thinking I might have another slide, but I don't. They had to go south the area, and this would be areas that they'd already come from, so you can understand their grumbling at this point in time. In order to avoid Edom, they had to go back south, really to, as you see, sort of the tip of the Red Sea there at Aqaba, and then to avoid Edom, they had to go along that black line there that takes them up through Moab to the Amorites and to Bashan. So that's just a visual for you. Chapter 21, we now come to the king of Arad, the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south. And here that Israel was coming on the road to Ephraim, and then he fought against Israel, and he took some of them prisoners. So Israel made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord listened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. So they named, the name of that place was called Hormah. Now it was at Hormah, if you remember, that Israel was defeated when the spies came back and gave a bad report. Remember, only Joshua and Caleb said we can go in, so God judged them. And then upon hearing that judgment, the people said, no, we're sorry, we're going to go take the land. And they get routed, and that was this area that was, same title, Hormah. It was there that Israel was defeated in their ill-advised attempt to enter the promised land by force, after refusing to enter it by faith. God brought them back to this same place, and it's here because, as we read, they sought the Lord, they asked for his divine protection, and God gave them the victory. And then they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to go around, as we mentioned, to go around the land of Edom. And the soul of the people was very discouraged on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in this wilderness? for there's no food, there's no water. And here it is, and our soul loathes this worthless bread, manna. So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people. They bit the people, and many of the people died. Now, as I mentioned, to go around the Edomites, they had to turn and go backwards. And so they're very discouraged, understandable. But then they begin complaining once again. And think about it. Think about the pillar of fire by night, the pillar of cloud by day, the tonnage, over 5,000 tons of manna every morning. This rock that followed provided them water, and yet what's their response? You've brought us here to die. They're discouraged, and there's no food, there's no water. Yes, there is. And then that phrase, and we hate manna, we hate that worthless bread. They're complaining against the bread of heaven. This is the sin, the ultimate sin, that still plagues many believers today. It's the sin of ingratitude. It's ingratitude against God, who miraculously sustained them in the wilderness. And God does not take ingratitude lightly. In fact, when we read the judgments in Romans chapter 1, that's going to come onto the world because they denied the Creator and who he was, it then makes this statement, and they were not thankful. Ingratitude. I could go on and on, but I'll leave it at that. Okay, so this is that map that I was looking for previously. You can see Mount Hor there, where my ear is. Okay, and again, grab the PDF PowerPoint. You can see these slides much more clearly. Mount Hor, Kadesh Barnea, and then, as I mentioned, to avoid going through Edom and going straight across where you see Tamar and Basra, that would be Petra of the day, they had to go south and retrace their steps and then cross over and go around Edom. So that's that visual I was looking for. And then verse 7 says, and remember, now they're being bitten by these fiery serpents because of their ingratitude. And then the people came to Moses and said, we've sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. First of all, the quick recognition of what they've done is noteworthy here. They seem to swiftly come to repentance, and that's to their credit. So the people came to Moses, we've sinned, we've spoken against the Lord, we've spoken against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people. And then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent, set it on a pole, and it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. And so Moses made a bronze serpent, and he put it on a pole, and so it was. If a serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. Now this is interesting. Remember what their request was, is take away the serpents. Please, Moses, pray that the Lord does that. He doesn't take away the serpents, but healing will require faith. So it's not that he's miraculously going to take, and there's a lesson here in our lives, obviously. He's not going to just take away the things that are dangerous to us. He's going to give us deliverance from them, but that deliverance will always come by faith. Because we're told without faith we cannot please God. But here's some thoughts that I gleaned from the commentators. One said, if the serpent that he made, if it laid horizontally on that vertical pole. Thus, it would be a visual representation of the cross. Now, many traditions show the serpent that's sort of wrapped around the pole, and this concept is the source for that ancient figure of healing and medicine, the serpent wrapped around a pole. So, a bronze serpent speaks of evil, but that's the serpent. The bronze always represents judgment. So the bronze serpent is sin judged. Jesus, who knew no sin, became sin for us on the cross. And our sin was judged in Jesus. A bronze serpent is a picture of this evil judged and dealt with. Now, it's Charles Spurgeon, great fan, obviously. You've heard me speak and quote him often. The great preacher of Victorian England, Charles Spurgeon, gave his life to Jesus after hearing a message on Isaiah 45, verse 22. And hearing that text connected to this account of Moses lifting up the serpent in the wilderness with the people looking and living, looking upon and living because of their faith, Spurgeon was so impressed by this picture of the gospel and salvation in the book of Numbers that he chose an engraving of Moses lifting up a serpent in the wilderness as a logo for all of his publications. Those who look upon me shall be saved. Now, the children of Israel moved on and camped at Oboth, and they journeyed from Oboth and camped at Abraham in the wilderness, which is east of Moab towards the sunrise. From there they moved and camped at the valley of Zered, and from there they moved and camped on the other side of the Arnon, which is in the wilderness that extends from the border of the Amorites. For Arnon is at the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. And therefore it said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Wahib and Supra, the brooks of Arnon, and the slope of the brooks that reaches in the dwelling of Ar and lies on the border of Moab. Now, as we make our way through here, a lot of these names we cannot really identify. We can't put a pin drop there. So let me just tell you that Israel in these next passages are ultimately making their way around Edom and going all the way up alongside of the Dead Sea. And so they're going to go through Moab, they're going to through Ammon, and then they're going to get to the Bashan. So that visual I want you to see, they're making their way now northward. I have a note here saying the route that Israel took is difficult to reconstruct because many of the places named are no longer can be identified. So they're making their way towards the promised land, towards that picture that I showed you about Mount Nebo, where we had that image or that statue of the bronze serpent. So let me go through this quickly. From there they went to Beer, which is the well where the Lord said to Moses, gather the people together and I'll give them water. And then Israel sang, spring up, O well, all of you sing of it. The well, the leaders sank, they dug by the nobles' poles, by the lawgiver with their staves. And from the wilderness they went to Mattanah, and from Mattanah to Nahaleel, from Nahaleel to Bamoth, from Bamoth in the valley, that is the country of Moab, to the top of Nebo or Pisgah, which looks down on the wasteland. And then Israel sent messengers, and now we're going to get to some eerie, spooky sort of stuff. We're going to not spend a whole lot of time here, but we know about the Nephilim that's in the land. We know about this the fallen angels that commingled with women and produced an ungodly offspring. These are the giants of the land. Think Goliath at this point in time. But two are going to be mentioned. The first is Sihon. He's the king of the Amorites, saying, "Let us pass through your land. We will not turn aside from fields or vineyards. We will not drink water from wells. We will go by the king's highway until we pass through your territory." But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all of his people together, and they went out against Israel in the wilderness. And he came to Jahaz, and they fought against Israel. And then Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the people of Ammon. For the border of the people of Ammon was fortified. And so Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and all of its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and had taken all of his land from his hand as far as the Arnon. Therefore, those who speak in the Proverbs say, "Come to Heshbon, let it be built. Let the city of Sihon be repaired." So, here's another map for you to take a look at so you can see which way we're going. So you see where we had to circle back around and avoid Edom. And now we come to Moab. And this is that sort of area which these wars are going to take place. We're going to make our way through the Amorites and then up to Bashan. And if you can see those, that's on the eastern side now of the Dead Sea and on the eastern side of the Jordan River. When we are finished with these battles that God is going to give them amazing victory over, these are going to be territories that 2.5 tribes of Israel are going to settle in once Joshua goes in and conquers the land. So, again, some of these places we don't know today. So let's go through this quickly. For fire went out from Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It consumed Ar of Moab, the lords of the heights of Arnon. Woe to you, Moab, who have perished, O people of Chemosh, foreign pagan god. He has given his sons as fugitives and his daughters into captivity to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, but we have shot at them. Heshbon has perished as far as Dibon. Then we laid waste as far as Nophah, which reaches Medeba. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And then Moses sent spies out of Jazer, and they took its villages, and they drove the Ammonites out who were there. And they turned and went up by the way to Bashan. Now we're heading towards the Golan. And here's another one of the giants. This is Og, the king of Bashan. We went out against them, he and all of his people, to battle at Indrai. And then the Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him. Remember the reports that the spies brought back. There's giants in the land. We're like grasshoppers." And so to their credit, these people, the generation that's to enter the land, are given victory through faith. God is going to do this. Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand, all of his people in his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So they defeated him, his sons, and all of his people. There was no survivor left there, and they took possession of his land. So again, from the commentator, do not fear him, for I've delivered him into your hand. This was a needed encouragement, because Og of Bashan was noted for his size and his strength. In Deuteronomy 3, it says, "For only Og, the king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. And they took possession of his land, and that land becomes a part of Israel and a portion of the inheritance of the tribe that settles east of the Jordan." So this chapter, as we look back, it saw the new generation of Israel. We saw their unbelief. We had the fiery snakes that came, but quick to repent. And then by faith, they were healed. But after the bronze serpent incident, Israel's now going to trust God. He's going to give them many victories, and this is going to be the beginning of the possession of the land. And yet we're going to see there's still going to be many challenges before us as we continue to wander through the wilderness. Now we're going to cover one more chapter, but before we do, I thought I'd just show you this slide because I find it fascinating that you see those red blocks. Those red blocks in this slide, let me see, yeah. These red blocks are the strongholds that Israel failed to defeat completely. They didn't drive them all the way out. And so these strongholds that we're looking at, let me do this, yeah, so there's one at the top, there's three. Interestingly enough, all the way up at the top is the Golan Heights, which has been a hornet's nest for Israel. And then you have Jenin, Nablus, Ramallah, Jericho. This is the house of the moon god. These are all in the West Bank today. These are hornets' nest of terrorists today. And then, of course, on the other side, on the coast, you have Gaza. So these are the strongholds that Israel failed way back then to completely drive out. And so they still remain a thorn in Israel's flesh to this day. All right, last chapter, chapter 22. Then the children of Israel moved and they camped in the plains of Moab, on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. Now, Balak, and now we're coming into a third different kind of chapter, or we're moving into, we don't have time to go through it all this week, but we're now going to spend the next couple of chapters in Moab and that sort of land, dealing with Balaam and dealing with the king of that area, Balak. So let's see how far we can get. Now, Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. We're reminded of Rahab in Jericho. When the spies finally get there, her response was, "Where have you been? We've heard, we've seen all of what your God has done for you." Here it says that Balak, the king, in a sense, the son of Zippor, he knew all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab, notice the phrase, Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. So Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this company will lick up everything around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. And Balak, the son of Zippor, was the king of the Moabites at that time. And then he sent messengers, here we go, to Balaam, the son of Beor at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, "Look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth. They're settling next to me. Therefore, come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. Now, keep in mind, the Moabites and the Ammonites, these are the daughters of Lot, the descendants that came from them. God told them they were not to be attacked. Edom, Esau, that it was not to be attacked, the brother of Isaac. Jacob. And so now, it's in a sense their family, but this king is freaking out. Now, Balaam must have had quite the reputation, because where he's at, the river is the Euphrates. He's 360 miles away. Remember, with no phones, no internet, no Fox News, no whatever the case may be, how would this reputation of this guy had to be profound. And so Balaam feels like his back's against the wall. What's going to happen? And so he contacts and sends a party out to bring Balaam back. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the diviner's fee in their hand. We're going to find that Balaam truly is a prophet, but you're going to spell that word Profit. He's in it for the money. We'll find that out. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the diviner's fee in their hand, and they came to Balaam, and they spoke to him the words of Balak. And he said to them, lodge here tonight, and I will bring word to you as the Lord speaks to me. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam, 360-mile journey. And then God came to Balaam and said, who are these men with you? So Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, look, a people has come out of Egypt, and they cover the face of the earth. Come now, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to overpower them and drive them out. And God says to Balaam, you shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. Now, is there a lot of gray areas there? I know that Balaam's a mysterious figure for us, but somehow he's got a relationship with God. And God basically, I just wrote here, no means no. I don't think God could have been any clearer to Balaam. You shall not go with them, and you shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. But remember, this prophet, Profit, is going to look for some wiggle room. So Balaam rose in the morning, and he said to the princes of Balak, go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you. And the princes of Moab rose, they went to Balak, and they said, Balaam refuses to come with us. And then Balak again sent princes, more numerous and more honorable than they, and they came to Balaam and said to him, thus says Balak the son of Zippor, please, let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will certainly honor you greatly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Therefore, please come and curse this people for me. You can see that Balaam was not disappointed to see them coming back, and his ears would have perked up when he heard this response. Then Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord my God, to do less or more. Now therefore, please, stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. I think he's forgotten the no means no, right? And God comes to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call you, rise and go with them. But only the word which I speak to you that you shall do. So, notice here, we have no record of the men coming and calling upon him. We're just told in verse 22, Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. I think he's thinking of those house full of silver and gold, right? So this is disobedience. No means no, Balaam. And so no one came. He rises and he sets out to go. And so the Lord's anger is aroused because he went. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. And he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. And now the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the way, and he went to the field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards, with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. And so he struck her again. And then the angel of the Lord went further, and he stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right hand or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with the staff. And then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey. And she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you, that you have struck me these 3 times?" Now, what's interesting here, I think the weirdest part of this is Balaam not just being shocked, but he enters into a conversation, right? He's out of his mind. And so Balaam then says to the donkey, "Because you've abused me, I wish there was a sword in my hand, and now I would kill you." And so the donkey says again to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you?" And Balaam says, "What? Again, having this conversation is just bizarre. I can't really think of anything. No." I remember reading Campbell Morgan's comment. He was lecturing in seminary, and someone asked him if he really believed that a donkey could talk. And he said, sure, I believe that. In fact, I think I could do that, make a donkey talk." And he said, and then the people sort of scoffed, and he says, "Okay, here, you create a donkey, and then I know I can make him talk." And all of a sudden that sort of sunk in. If God can create a donkey, surely he has the ability to turn the language on. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. He saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed his head. He fell flat on his face, and the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come to stand against you, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely I would also have killed you by now and let her live." And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displeases you, I will turn back." Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but only the word that I speak to you, that you shall speak. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. Now, when Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him in the city of Moab, which is on the border of Arnon, the boundary of the territory. And then Balak said to Balaam, did I not earnestly send to you, calling for you? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to honor you? And Balaam said to Balak, look, I have come to you. Now have I any power at all to say anything? The word that God puts in my mouth, that I must speak. So Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Kirjath Husath. And then Balaam offered oxen and sheep, and he sent some to Balaam and to the princes who were with him. Now this is, by the way, this is offerings to a pagan god. These are not Levitical offerings whatsoever. And so it was the next day that Balak took Balaam and he brought him to a high place, the high places of Baal or Baal. That's why we know this is the pagan deities, God, Baal worship. So he takes him to the high places of Baal, from there that he might observe and see the extent of the people. And we'll pump the brakes and pause here, and we'll pick it up next week and hear what Balaam has to say. I think I'd rather hear what the donkey had to say, but we'll listen to what takes place and what transpires here. So that's our session for this week. God bless you, and shalom.